Today we have another GTA 5 what if video. Since the reception on the last one was so good, this time we are basing it off of a suggestion by one of you guys. So let's go. What if Brad survived the shot in the Prologue mission? Brad is transferred to a prison hospital and Trevor already went on the run, and Michael is on his way to Los Santos with his family. Brad, after being in the hospital and getting treatment for gunshot wounds, ends up in the Bolingbroke Penitentiary near Sandy Shores. Now in this reality, Dave never really wrote those letters to Trevor pretending to be Brad, since Brad was anyway in prison, and the whole purpose of Dave writing those letters to Trevor was to make Trevor think that Brad was in prison. Now here's another big change that I'm gonna make. While Brad was in prison, he learned to read and write. I say this because Trevor mentioned in a conversation with Lester that Brad didn't know how to read or write back at the time of the Prologue mission. So Trevor and Brad started emailing each other, and Brad was allowed visits, but by that time Trevor was already on his way to Los Santos to look for Michael. Speaking of Michael, he at this point still thought Trevor was dead, and in this reality he knew that Brad was in prison, but Trevor would still, like the original, bring Brad up from time to time. Like before the Polito score heist, Trevor would eventually be really impatient and insistent on getting Brad out before the big score heist. And since Brad of course never died, Trevor and Michael didn't ever have that big fight, and Trevor never really dug up his grave. And Michael would very reluctantly agree to assist with the prison break, and our crew would be on their way to Bolingbroke Penitentiary soon after. I imagine that the prison break would work similarly to the prison break heist from GTA Online, and our crew would narrowly escape being caught, leaving them to put the UD heist on hold for a few months. During this time, Brad would reintegrate into the crew and also meet Franklin as a new member. However, since I said that Brad educated himself in prison and changed a lot, this version of Brad is completely different from the rude, disrespectful piece of shit as we know him from the Prologue. In this reality, Brad would also come along on the big score heist, likely as a way to repay the crew for getting him out of prison, and he would be a gunman alongside Michael, which of course, as we know, these two would serve as a distraction, while Franklin and the rest of the gang, just like in the original, would go down to the real underground vault and steal over $200 million worth of gold. With the big one a success, our crew would still have to take care of the main antagonists, and in the final mission, Brad would unfortunately be killed while fighting alongside the crew right outside the foundry, and the person responsible for all this would be Trevor's best buddy, Devin Weston. When Trevor is tasked with kidnapping Devin, instead of bringing him to the meeting place in one piece, Trevor would use a variety of tools to chop Devin Weston up into literal pieces. And when he would be done, Devin would be completely unrecognizable, since of course he is literally in pieces. When Trevor gets to the meeting place, Michael and Franklin throw up at the sight of what's left of Devin, and also because of the smell of his remains, which were left in the trunk of the car for several hours. Michael, in his usual fashion, completely freaks out on Trevor for what he did, but Trevor would admit that his temper got the better of him and that this was an act of revenge for what happened to Brad. And before Michael and Trevor could continue arguing, Franklin would bring their attention to the open trunk and the fact that they have to get rid of a dude, or well, whatever's left of him anyway. Finally, the trio would push the car off the cliff while still being on the verge of throwing up, concluding the story of this alternate universe. And with that said, I want to again thank the person who submitted this idea for the video, and if you like what I do here on YouTube, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Until the next video or stream, thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.